Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing good and enjoying your day so far. One of the big questions of this Rostermania period is whether we're going to get any big surprises in terms of a certain name player making a return to competitive Call of Duty. That man, of course, is FormaL. Nadeshot said if he wants to come to 100 Thieves, he will have that door open for him. And FormaL not exactly making a pitch to Nadeshot and to some of these other teams, but certainly implying his opinion on how he changed the game from an AR perspective, saying players like Dashy, players like Simp, maybe Scrappy, among others, are direct descendants of his, and if it wasn't for him paving the way for ARs in Call of Duty, many of these players simply would not exist. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. Seems like Fred stayed a few days extra out there in Saudi Arabia, so I thought this was really cool to see. We've got plenty to dive into though, of course, today. 3 more sets of Lion Man casts to go through. This was Estriel's overall 2024 CDL season. I think pretty damn good overall. The numbers I don't think quite do justice to the eye test on Estriel, and also he wasn't on a very good team. 8 in 20 online records, 6 in 10 however on LAN, which was far superior, and on LAN, Estriel was arguably, I would say, their best player at times. The numbers don't always paint that picture, right? Like his hardpoint kills per 10, stuff like this, but in the other game modes he was relatively objective-minded, and I thought he was pretty good on LAN. I thought he was making the right plays a lot of the time, and generally just impressed me this season as a rookie, and was certainly in the conversation of being Rookie of the Year, in the sense that Gorillas eventually made the run to get top 3 at that final Major 4. They qualified for the World Championship. Like, he was in that conversation up there with Gwyn and up there with aBeZy, but you know, obviously the numbers overall weren't so good. The league decided to go another way in terms of the way that they decided that, and I can understand that they gave it to Gwyn, which was, you know, an interesting decision, but I get what they were coming from. Estriel, where does he go next year? Because Los Angeles Gorillas, who knows what's happening there? They didn't even go to the World Cup. Estriel did with G2, but they were terrible. Estriel, I thought, held his own with Lins, and there is an argument to say that if you are G2, simply run that back. Keep Lins, keep Estriel. I think they were fine on the SMGs. The difficulty is when you've come top 16 at an event with amateur teams, you know, is there anything that's fine at that point? Maybe not. But if they kept Estriel, they kept Lins as your SMG duo, brought in Cobra +1, that might be a decent way to go for next season for those guys. And if he doesn't get a spot on G2, they go a different direction, Minnesota Rocker, then I think another opportunity might be available somewhere else. Maybe if Gorillas get bought out or something, they could look into him. But, you know, a few teams like that should be in the ballpark. Envoy was a very interesting player this year for Toronto, right? Because he started the year, well, he started pretty well. Obviously, Major 1 was phenomenal. Then after that, he fell off relatively quickly. His hardpoint, let's not forget, at times was atrocious. Like, he could get a kill to save his life at times. Obviously, people were wondering exactly how that happened, because Envoy, world champion, top player. The point was, bring him in for Hixie, and of course that's going to be a good decision, right? Because it's a theoretical upgrade. And sure, it was to some degree, but, you know, Envoy's performances weren't exactly great until, to be fair, towards the end of the season, right? I thought that Envoy really turned it up at the end of the year, and even though Toronto still didn't get the results they were looking for, Envoy at the last couple of events, certainly at the World Cup, I thought was very good, and you know, maybe he stepped up a bit when CleanX stepped down on some degree. But interesting for Envoy, just because that Toronto team, they are going to have to think about what they do for next year, how, if they want to improve, whatever the case is. And also looking elsewhere, right, looking at some other teams, because I talked about this even before Thieves did very well at the World Cup, but, you know, the possibility that, let's say, Toronto decide to blow it up and Envoy finds his way out, because, you know, let's be honest, a few months ago, if they were going to make a change, Envoy looked like the most likely man to go. Now I think he's arguably the most likely to stay, alongside Scrappy, of course, who, well, they're not going to get rid of him unless the team blows up and Scrappy wants to leave or gets a better offer elsewhere, which seems unlikely right now, but not completely impossible. Then Envoy would be free, or not necessarily free, but he'd be able to go somewhere else, and a team like Thieves, like if Thieves could get Envoy back for Kremp, just out of interest, right, the Envoy JoeDeceives, let's say Nastie or FormaL, I mean, we'll discuss in a second, and Ghosty situation, that I think would be very interesting, but probably not going to be happening. And these are Drazah's cards as well. Great overall season, I thought, from him. I mean, the impressive thing really to me is just the overall impact in terms of kills per 10, damage per 10. The numbers are good, the KD is good, but, you know, we've not seen an AR on this team over the last couple of years deliver impact like this. I mean, from an AR perspective, he's 94 overall in kills per 10 in hardpoint, 97 overall in kills per 10 in control, and up there on the damage numbers as well. So 94, you know, out of 99, 99 is the best. That's probably Scrappy or someone like that. And then 94 is there or thereabouts as one of the absolute highest performing ARs in the league in this category. And neither RCTs nor Slasher has made this amount of impact in terms of, you know, overall damage and kills and stuff like that per 10 minutes. So I thought Drazah was very impressive this year, and you know, if they get rid of him and make a change, I never really thought that was a good idea anyway, although I wasn't sure that it was. Well, I thought it was definitely possible after champs because of the top 6 placing and, you know, the apparent behind the scenes drama. Now that seems far less likely, and well, Drazah certainly solidified his spot as one of the absolute best players in the game. Before we talk about the FormaL stuff, this is one thing I wanted to make clear, and it was also somewhat relevant for the FormaL situation as well, in the sense that Falcons were obviously coming into play, and there was a question as to what they were going to do with their team and whether they would put some money on the line to get an absolute veteran legend of the scene into their team. I still don't think it's impossible that we see something like that happen, but Falcons have a lot of money, if you guys aren't aware. Now, it's not like they're trying to waste the money, I think is the point. They're trying to use the money wisely. They just have a lot of money, right? So you're talking $1 million, like the $1 million for Nico from Falcons is not, you know, that doesn't feel like $1 million to other teams. That feels like a bit less because they've got lots to play with. So, you know, I don't think they're trying to like blow money for no good reason. And they are, when they are spending money, they're trying to do so in esports that it makes sense to do so in, like Counter-Strike, of course, massive esports, and even in, I think, Apex, right? Imperial, HAL, those guys, bringing them in. Of course, in Warzone, they've signed the best team with Shifty, Hisoka, and Biffle and those guys. So the question would therefore be, will they do the same thing in COD at some point? Because Nico, who Falcons have pursued for some time, of course, phenomenal Counter-Strike player, he's going to be joining next year on a 3-year deal, and they're spending basically $1 million on a buyout. So this is a pretty big deal, right? And obviously it makes you wonder if they're doing that in CS, is it possible they do that in COD as well? Because they are going to initially field Falcons, that 4-man Saudi Arabian team, the same roster that played at the World Cup. If that doesn't work, if they start the season poorly, if they don't improve quickly, I think they might look to do something pretty mega, right? Because next year, they're going to want Falcons to qualify for the World Championship, right? And only 8 teams qualify out of the 12. That's going to be a tall order. And they're at least going to want to be a threat at their own World Cup. We're going back to the World Cup next year in Riyadh. Like, they're going to want the official Vegas Falcons, or Team Falcons, they're going to represent again at that tournament from the actual COD League. They're going to want them to be competitive. So I wouldn't say it's impossible that if not this upcoming season, during the season, certainly next off-season, I think if this Saudi Arabian team doesn't work or improve as they might hope it to, I think they're going to go big. Especially because next off-season, we've got some free agents, right? HyDra's contract is probably going to be up. Scrappy's contract is probably going to be up. Shotzzy's contract is probably going to be up. So, you know, I think there could be some big money floating around, and don't be surprised if it does. But let's talk about this FormaL thing. Thought this was pretty hard, to be fair, as well. Batman-inspired Puffer, and Dashy's like, do I cop? And the boys come up with this, which I thought was pretty sensational in the replies. But we know that FormaL in many ways has kind of considered Dashy to be his protege. They teamed together on the OpTic Chicago team back in that Cold War season. Didn't end especially well, but FormaL's been streaming over the last few days and has been saying a fair bit. Especially this I thought was very interesting, right? Discussing FormaL's perspective, and a very understandable perspective, on his career and what it kind of has taken to take the steps that he has done. Because FormaL isn't wrong in what he says here, that back in his day, many of the AR players, when he first came around into the scene, let's say, you know, Ghost Advanced Warfare, were not playing in the aggressive style that many of the ARs employ today. You know, when FormaL came in Ghost, it was only a year earlier in Black Ops 2 that was the absolute peak of the idea of the anchor, right? Back in Black Ops 2, you would have an AR player sitting like a statue the entire game on, you know, a head glitch somewhere just to hold the spawns for the team. In Ghosts as well, that was a similar philosophy, but the game modes were different. But that never really translated to the jetpack era, and certainly didn't really translate on the same level once we went back to boots on the ground, because people had learned to take the game to the next level, and FormaL was a big part of why.
Your top 3 AR in COD still? Well, I haven't played COD in 4 years, so no. Or do you mean like just like ranking? I I do. I think I'm fucking #1, unanimously. I was doing it in an era where, like, I kind of invented, like chowing, like, literally, like, chowing. All the ARs that you see are just descendants of mine, like Dashy, Sib, like, that's all because of me. People didn't used to play like that. We used to play like fucking like Wani and shit, like playing hell like passive and shit. Like Brandon is a direct descendant of mine. I'm just like the Dracula AR. Like bro, I'd be playing against a team in the finals, and I'm standing off the head glitch slightly to the right just so that I could check the other AR during the series, just so that he thinks like, damn, this guy thinks I'm fucking ass. That's what kind of person I was. Like I wasn't snaking, like fucking trying to like stay alive and shit. I was trying to bury the other AR. I think it's just like different, I don't know. And if I was winning gunfights versus an AR, I would just be taking more and more disrespectful chows as the series goes on. Like just cheat checking left and right. Like bro, you can't kill me, I'm just gonna keep doing this. Your whole team knows too. So it's like that's why I was so like bad in World War II compared to the jetpack years. And I wasn't even bad at World War II. People would gas the fuck out of that. But fucking, it's just because it was the complete opposite of what kind of AR I was. I think I was better at AW or BO3. If I'm being honest, bro, all 3 of those years, like I didn't feel like anyone was fucking with me. I would have bad series here and there, but like overall, like I'm fighting the other AR like the whole year. Like I didn't feel like anyone was, like when I was on point, like I would just slaughter them for the most part. There were times when people would get the best of me, obviously, but like the ratio was insane. Dude, I was going into series in Black Ops 3 where people were fucking banning the M8, banning thermal, banning the SVG. Like they're using all their bans like on my weapons. I'm just like, bro, how scared are you to play me? Just going into a series gassed as hell. Where do I rank Cold War? I don't know. It's kind of like an outlier. It was a good COD. It was good. The spawns made sense. It was fun. I wish I could have played Cold War in like a different time in my life. Like it could have been same team even. Just in a different time in my life where I was just like taking it a lot more serious, I guess. We actually had a pretty solid team. We just never reached our full potential in Cold War. It was all of our faults, truthfully. We all like just didn't go as hard as we probably should have been, but we were all okay with it because we liked each other so much. Like we were just such a vibey team. Like we didn't even mind that we were getting shit on sometimes, which is kind of crazy to think about. Which would never fly nowadays, but like we just weren't taking it serious. I think it was kind of just like trickle down check still from MW, the whole online league. Even that year, MW19, like our team on the Huntsman, we had another really good roster there for the most part. But like, and we were good. We went to the first LAN in London and just shit all over everybody. And then it went straight to online. That was one problem. Like we're playing everything online, dude. Like that was ass. Getting on every day and playing league matches online was crazy, man. Or not even league matches, tournaments online. Like that's crazy.
Lots of interesting words said there from FormaL. I thought was very interesting, but definitely his perspective on some of these players wouldn't even be here or wouldn't be the same players if not for him was pretty fascinating. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why it becomes very challenging for players to overtake guys like FormaL in the all-time rankings, in my opinion, right? Because, you know, let's say, difficult, right? Because Simp is an SMG and all this, but let's say Scrappy has a phenomenal career, or even Dashy is probably the closest, and really, let's say Dashy, he's now a world championship winner. Let's say Dashy wins another 10 events over the next like 3 or 4 seasons, and Dashy's right up there in terms of accolades with FormaL, obviously the talent on a similar level, but can Dashy, you know, based on what FormaL is saying, is it possible for Dashy to like ever surpass FormaL as the greatest ever? It's always possible. Like if Dashy wins like 4 rings and whatever, it's probably not gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like then it's possible, right? But in some sense, FormaL is not wrong that he laid the foundations to many of these players, and obviously helped Dashy even on a personal level to get to that point as well. And just on that same argument, I thought this was interesting here from Jake Hare, who talked about Simp versus Scump. So we looked at these numbers the other day and saw that over the last few years, Simp is the only player on this list to have a KD in this category who's actually an SMG player. So Jake Hale kind of wonders, at what point does Simp get, you know, become the #1 SMG ever, right, over Scump? What would make him overtake Scump in most people's view? You know, couple more seasons, another ring, what do you think? Jake Hale in the reply says, I think a ring next season would make it almost impossible to argue against Simp. That, or if he can hit maybe 15 to 20 wins, it becomes even. So, you know, and it's a very interesting debate because people talk about impact and contribution to Call of Duty from Scump, and I think that's a relevant factor, but how relevant is that factor compared to other things? But also, as FormaL is kind of saying, in many ways, Scump paved the way for many. So, as a default, he gets a bit of a boost, maybe? I don't know if that's fair or not. I think it probably is fair. Like, Scump is, I would say, the second best Call of Duty player ever behind Crimsix, and obviously Scump's #1 SMG of all time. To me, another ring for Simp to get to 3 rings. It depends how much you value the rings. Scump would only have 1, Simp would have got to 3, but obviously Simp would have won far fewer events, and obviously not as good Grand Finals record, stuff like this. It's always difficult to say, but I thought it was an interesting angle on the conversation, really, that those that were the pioneers probably deserve more credit on those all-time lists, like they deserve a little bit of a boost as a result, or maybe a massive boost as a result, or maybe nothing at all. I don't know, depends on your perspective, but very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.